Okay. Hello, everybody, and this is the crystal ball we've been gazing in. Hope it's not too spooky for you. Just to enlarge a little on what Richard said, the brief we had was to look 10 years into the future, which is not exactly futurology. I mean, 10 years we'll still be around, we won't be into the next generation yet, but it's a fast-changing world. So in this bit about framework, what we agreed to look at is some of the issues which seem likely to change over the next 10 years or so, and provide a context within which to describe the language school of the future. So what's going to change? And you might agree or disagree with these individual items. This is how we saw it. We see that here in Spain in particular, but probably in many other countries, that teaching of English in particular is getting better and better. The results from school level in the state school system are getting better and better. Teachers, Spanish authorities are investing more and more in the training of teachers, so there's a likelihood that there'll be an improved provision for English teaching in the state sector, which of course raises questions about private language schools and their role. The type of English which students want, will they continue to want this rather woolly concept of general English? Or will they be more specialised in their demands? We feel they'll become more and more specialised in their demands, and that the future of general English may be limited and restricted, especially for older age groups. Clients and students will make demands on us. Apologies for the lack of the apostrophes there. Can you just picture an apostrophe after the S in each case? Not after the demands, unless you want one. I'm part of the campaign for the retention of the apostrophe. It's a subgroup of the Queen's English Society, which anybody can join. Talking of the Queen's English Society, the next point is that the population is ageing right across Europe, and one of the future markets for English language instruction, or language instruction generally, might be the third age people, the people who reach retirement and then suddenly decide they should have learned a language at school. Let me just take us down a bit further. It seems certain that there will be more student and job-related mobility with the Bologna process, and with globalization continuing, that mobility will be growing rather than retracting, provided that we don't lose our cheap air flights and travel possibilities. Non-educational institutions getting into language teaching. One of the presentations which follows on will look at that possibility in more detail. People realizing that there's a profit to be made out of language teaching and getting on the bandwagon. Publishers cutting out the language schools. We don't want to give the publishers too many ideas, but cutting out the language schools and saying we can sell direct to the end user. We see that lesson content might change. People might be focusing much more on content rather than on just the nuts and bolts of language. So it's the move towards more CLIL, more content and language integrated learning. The profile of teachers, with or without an apostrophe, the profile of teachers that are needed in language schools may change. Everything is changing so fast. It may be that we need, 10 years down the line, a different kind of staffing profile in our schools, with a different range of skills among the teaching community in language schools. And increased globalization refers, many of you will have read David Gradol's book, English Next, in which he goes into this in much more detail, but the growth of English as an international language seems to us to be significant. It's a trend which is growing and growing and growing. And standards, what is acceptable English, what is not acceptable English, likely to shift as a result of this. Because as all of us know, there's more English spoken between non-native speakers of English than there is between native speakers and non-native speakers, or probably between native speakers as well. So, takes us to the last bit. This is a point that might come out a bit more in the following presentations, but the idea that there's likely to be more emphasis in education on process rather than just on content. Much less emphasis on knowledge for knowledge's sake, and much more emphasis probably on the process of learning and the processes involved in learning. For example, within a framework such as task-based learning, where process is valued as much as product. This is an insight which is coming across the board in education and is bound to affect language schools. The fact that the cost of technology is bound to fall, and I think the original wording of this included the word dramatically. What seems to happen every time a new piece of technology comes out is that it stays expensive for a while, and then I think, as we all know, the cost falls, and it becomes a mass market thing, which language schools probably will be affected by as well. And finally, the belief that more learning is likely to take place outside the classroom as learners develop more and more autonomous learning habits and become more and more clued up about the possibilities which exist outside the classroom. And these are all factors which we felt would govern the profile of language schools 10 years down the line, and each of the groups who are now going to report at rather greater length than I need to will be looking at that as a kind of backcloth to their reports. So that's by way of introduction.
Thank you very much.